I'm just gonna be honest, a lot of people are probably gonna disagree with me, but I think doulas might be making things worse. Peace and wholeness. Welcome back to my channel, Her Holistic Path, where I give birth guidance and share my holistic healing journey. Now, I've been a doula for about 3 years now, and when I first became a doula, one of the things that was instilled in me was this idea that doulas are universal. We support births at home, at birth centers, and at the hospital. And if you choose to go to the hospital, then the doula will help you navigate that system. Now, I had no resistance with this thinking until recently during the pandemic. Doulas have not been allowed to attend births at hospitals, and really they've just been kind of like looked at as non-essential across the board. Now, how is it that all of these fast food places can stay open and that's essential, but a doula can't attend a birth? I don't know. That's a topic for another video. But when I saw the reaction of the doulas on my Facebook and on my Instagram, everyone did the same thing. They scurried to figure out, how am I going to be able to support my clients since there's this new rule that doulas can't attend births? So let's go virtual, right? And I want to pause and say I have no issue with virtually supporting clients. I in fact made a whole entire virtual doula program like 2 years ago before it was even popping off. So that's not my issue. But I realized in watching everyone's reaction, doulas are constantly trying to navigate this medical system. We're constantly, I was about to say shucking and jiving. Hell, we constantly be shucking and jiving around the hospital protocols, the rules, the doctors, the nurses, how everybody feels. Don't step on anybody's toes. And I feel this energy from so many doulas. It's like this silent doula code of just stay in line so that you don't get kicked out of any hospitals and you don't start, any issues. But I feel like by having that mentality of let's just stay in line, we do what we can, but we can't, buck against the system too hard. It's beginning to enable the system. It's beginning to say, you know what, we do accept this. And then we also have this subset of doulas who I probably fell into more radical, right? No, you have rights, you have autonomy, you can do what you want, right? But then just a couple months ago, this video came out of a woman in labor in the hospital, and the police came in because she didn't want to take some medicine. And they called the police on her because she was endangering her child. So the reality is, in my opinion, we cannot, in a quick, time sufficient way, fix the hospital. We cannot fix the medical system because we're trying to fix something that was never meant for us anyway. The reality is we're trying to fix something that's not even broken. Because when you really get down to the history of hospitals, the history of why did women stop having babies at home and start going to hospitals, it's not a natural progression because hospitals are safer. It mainly happened because of a cultural shift that started with the upper class, because they were, I don't want to say brainwashed, but they were influenced by other upper class white doctors who were whispering in their ears saying, you don't want to have that black granny midwife catching your, precious baby. Don't you want to have somebody who's educated and clean and in the same, socioeconomic bracket as you? So then the upper class people doing it, and we all know that the upper class people, in points in history, they set the standard so everybody else follows along. But what really put the nail in the coffin was in the early 1900s when a report came out that said doctors basically it said doctors don't know what they're doing. And so in order for y'all to know what y'all doing and learn, you should build learning hospitals. So rather than learning from midwives who have been in the game for years, their whole life, come from a lineage of midwifery, you know what doctors did? They said, okay, instead of asking midwives to teach us, because that's too lowly, what we're going to do is we're going to build these hospitals. We're going to convince women that birthing at home isn't safe, so that they all come rushing over to the hospital. And then that way we can bring in a bunch of students and observe and watch. Now, I made an entire video on the timeline of birth in America and really how we got up to this point where birth is extremely medicalized. And trust me, it was not a natural progression to make things safer. I'm not gonna harp on it anymore. Just click the video to watch it here, somewhere, or down below. My point is this: women, birthing people, pregnant people have the capacity to step outside of this system. Yet we keep going back to it and going back to it and hoping that it's going to get better, and having a little reform and a tiny bit of change and a pinch of autonomy given back to us, and then we think things are getting better. But the sad reality is that we drank the Kool-Aid. We were never meant to be in hospitals in the first place. So it doesn't matter how much you reform it, how nice you make the rooms, how many birth balls you put in the rooms. It doesn't matter. Because this power was taken from us, the wool was pulled over our eyes, and we have historical amnesia because no one wants to ask the question, well, why are we in the hospital anyway? And so we just keep going back and going back and going back and thinking that it's getting better and bringing the doulas in to make it better. But I do not have a vested interest in making hospitals better. I don't. And I think this is something that some of the birth workers and some of the doulas have to admit. Now, if you have a true, deep, innate desire to reform hospitals for those people who do ultimately need to be in a hospital based on risk, health conditions, etc., that's awesome. But I have to say that I think there has to be a large number of doulas who do not have that innate desire. They are just falling in line with their training, and they're falling in line with the ideal doula standard. Because there's this very interesting concept by Foucault, a philosopher, where if you put a physical object that's like a camera, right? And it's surveying someone, and so they feel like they're being watched all the time. It doesn't matter if the camera is on, because after a while, they get so used to being watched that they will survey themselves. And instead of speaking out and speaking your truth and living in truth, you will begin to survey yourself and water down who you are to stay accepted in the collective. And my reality is that I am biased. I do have preferences because I'm a human being. We all do. And when it comes to birth work, I am not interested in reforming a system that not only wasn't made for me, but was built on the backs of my ancestors. And forget about black and white. If you are a female, if you are a woman, if you refer to yourself as a woman, how can you consciously accept the fact that obstetrics and gynecology was built on the torture and experimentation of women? It was built on that. So how can we try to reform a system that was never woman-centric? It was never centered on the health and wholeness of the woman, of the pregnant, birthing person. And so I personally think if we really come together, if we decolonize our minds, if we pull back the veil, if we stop being scared of our bodies and dip into the infinite information that is us, we won't need a system. We won't have to be dependent on the system. I mean, the rates that Black women are dying right now supersedes the rates that Black women were dying during birth, like during slavery. So you tell me, do we all need to be in the hospital? Do we all need to have a whole medical team just to have a baby? And part of this conversation, I will admit, it has to acknowledge our health, because healthy people can't carry out healthy biological functions. So if we're expecting unhealthy people to have healthy births, that is nonsensical. I see you eating chips and Kool-Aid, I'm gonna be like, bro, do you want to have a natural birth or not? Because you're not eating natural fruits. You're eating the chemicals. That means you might need some chemicals to have this baby. Now, that's not a blanket statement for everyone. You know, there's a lot of emotion in that, obviously. But I want y'all to feel what I'm saying. I don't want you to just hear it. I want you to feel what I'm saying. We don't need to be medically managed to have a baby. What is holding us back? Just like you got food co-ops, right? And farm co-ops, what's holding us back from a midwifery co-op? What's holding us back from saying, hey, it's 20 other people in my neighborhood who are pregnant. We're all going to come together. We're going to study. We're going to learn. We're going to even get with some local midwives who are actually practicing midwifery. And we're going to create a community. What's stopping us from that? And it's interesting because feminists have rallied, protested, and come together for so many different human rights issues. But there seems to be so much radio silence from the mass feminine movement when it comes to birth. Why is that? Because we still drinking the Kool-Aid. We still afraid of ourselves. We still lack the spirituality that type of movement requires. Let's look at birth control for an example, right? Now, women fought to be able to have the right to take birth control, to have abortions, just to have reproductive autonomy. But later down the line, when you look at birth control, a lot of people have crazy side effects, horrible experiences. And so what did people do? Did they knock on the door of the people who created the NuvaRing and Depo and the IUD and the pill and say, hey, you need to fix your product because it's horrible? No. They said, I'm not using this product anymore because it's horrible. And I'll find another way. And I'll learn my body. I'll trust my body. I'll use the herbs. I'll use the fertility awareness method. I'll be more conscious about my sexual relationships. Nobody is trying to reform the pill. Nobody is trying to take the bucket of chemicals that is thrown into birth control and say, hey, y'all need to make this better. There are no rallies that are like, y'all need to fix the depot shot. People just stop using it. They just say, this is no longer serving me. The cons outweigh the pros. Thank you, next. Drop it and go. Why aren't we doing this when it comes to birth? Why do we keep going back to the same thing that is hurting us, trying to fix it? Why don't we just let it go and move on to something else? And I know that there are people who have so many barriers to quality care, barriers to getting a midwife, barriers to birth centers, and it all kind of boils down to money and accessibility. But even that, isn't there a way around that too? Can't we figure, it's our body. This is our body. Isn't there a way that we can learn it? and build relationships with people in the community and create an ecosystem where we're not dependent on the medical hierarchy, it has to be possible. But I don't think we're going to get there when doulas are continuing to paint this picture that birthing in the hospital is based on preferences, because it's not. That's baloney. And I understand that there's a small group of people, a small, tiny, minuscule amount of people who actually do the research. They know how bad the hospital is, and they still go. And it's either because of fear, which can be eradicated and dealt with, or it is because of accessibility. They don't have access to maybe a safe, secure home to have their baby. They don't have access to X, Y, and Z. But that's a small group of people who are actually conscious of how bad the hospital is and still go. The majority of people who are in the hospital, they have the rose-colored glasses on because they took the tour and somebody said, oh, we've got birth balls and you can use the tub and this, that, and the third. And here comes the doula to say, oh, you're going to have a birth in the hospital? Okay, I support hospital births. Because how the hell would doulas make money if we didn't? You've got over 95% of people birthing in a hospital. How would we make money if we didn't support hospital birth? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't support hospital birth. And completely knows how I feel about that too. I can still help you navigate the system. That's not a problem. The problem is when we as birth workers, oh yeah, hospital, that's cool. We can ask for the birth ball and we can make sure you get the hep lock instead of the IV and blah, 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 right? Those things are valuable when you have to be in the hospital, but to a certain degree, it enables us. It enables the collective. And so I'll end with this. On a one-to-one basis, doulas in hospitals are excellent because they help people to maintain their autonomy. They help you to navigate a system in a time where you're just in a whole nother reality. They help you to avoid C-sections and avoid unnecessary interventions. But on a collective scale, I personally don't want to see doulas at every hospital birth. What I want to see is a decrease in hospital births and doulas at home births and birth centers and hospitals. I don't want to demonize hospital birth, but we have, in essence, put makeup on a pig. And when you get down to the history and the root of why we are doing this, it is not serving us. And I don't want to be a part of the problem. I don't want to be another person saying, yeah, just go to the hospital. No, why are you going? How can we do this some other way? And I know on the person by person is going to be different circumstances. But I'm talking about the collective. How can doulas and midwives and any other type of birth worker come together and say, we are not going to be ruled by this system anymore? That's it for my rant. I truly hope it resonates. I hope people understand where I'm coming from. I know that all of what I'm saying may not resonate, maybe just some of it, but ultimately, I just want the collective feminine to be able to reclaim their power. And I think the system in which we're working under right now is a false sense of autonomy when we enter into industrialized birth and we have to fight for our rights to a normal physiological birth. That doesn't feel like autonomy to me. It just feels like we're just playing a game. and the person at the top says, okay, you can have a little bit of that, fine. I don't know how to end this video. Let me know down below what you thought and what topics you would like to hear me talk about in my next doula chat videos. Subscribe if you want. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.